Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. All right, everything seems appropriate. I'll look into my camera just to see if anything happens. As always, that's pretty much always the case with my streams. But, that's part of the show. Anyway, I still haven't forgot about this article. Neither have I forgot about. What is it? Car dependency. This is actually pretty much a part of the effects of cars in society. It's car dependency. Doesn't directly say here, but it's correlated. So anyway, out of all the contents, this is where we left off. Cultural changes. I'll reread back to the beginning so I could cover everything. So, without further ado, let me take a sip of water. Okay. Cultural changes. Model split. Prior to the appearance of the automobile, horses, walking, and since the 19th century, streetcars were the major modes of transportation within cities. Horses require a large amount of care and were therefore kept in public facilities that were usually far from residences. The wealthy could afford to keep horses for private use, hence the term carriage trade referred to elite pron, pron, pa, patronage. Patronage. Yeah, it's patronage. Patronage. Pay. Pay. Yeah, it's pay without the Y. Strange. But yeah. To elite patronage. Horse manure left on the streets also create a sanitation problem. Distance. The motorcycle made regular medium distance travel more convenient and affordable, and after World War I, the automobile too, especially in areas without railways, because cars did not require rest, were faster than horse-drawn conveyances, and soon had a lower total cost of ownership. More people were returning able to travel farther than in earlier times. What the? The construction of highways in the 1950s continued this. Some experts suggested that many of these changes began during the early golden age of the bicycle from 1880 to 1915. This is what I really want to cover. The golden age of the bicycle. But anywho, changes to urban society. That's interesting. Further information. Multi-story car park. I didn't know multi-story is spelled that way. Beginning in the 1940s, most urban environments in the United States lost their streetcars, cable cars, and other forms of light rail to be replaced by diesel-run motor coaches or buses. Many of these have never returned, but some urban communities eventually installed rapid transit. Another change brought about by the car is that modern urban pedestrians must be more alert than their ancestors. In the past, a pedestrian had to worry about relatively slow moving streetcars or other obstacles of travel. With the proliferation of the car, a pedestrian has to anticipate safety risks of automobiles traveling at high speeds because they can cause serious injuries to a human and can be fatal. Unlike in previous times when traffic deaths were usually due to horses escaping control. Okay, let me finish this. According to many social scientists, the loss of pedestrian scale villages have also discontinued communities. Many people in developed countries have less contact with their neighbors and rarely walk unless they place a high value on walking. Also, this is an urban interchange in Shenzhen. Yeah, urban interchange. I really don't like those. They're confusing to navigate and you can't walk with them. It is freaking hard to because you're really not supposed to. And if you do, then yeah, you're most likely to get hit. Yeah, that's the thing about it. Oh yeah, anywho, yeah, I actually want to tell you about the awareness of cars. Yeah, if you're not aware, you could end up become a car casualty, die from roadkill, and that sucks. You really have to anticipate uh, where you walk and the cars you're driving. No, you're alongside the road. That's why sidewalks are very important in order to actually walk around. If you don't, you could easily die. That, and also it's pretty stressful. You have to worry about so many things like, okay, um, is there a blind spot? How fast cars are moving? Are able to have a reaction time, both the person, the pedestrian, and the driver, especially when it comes to turns, which that sucks. Interchange, yeah. Yeah, you always have to worry about that because they always turn. So, yeah, that's the thing about that. Now, on to advent of suburban society. In the decades following World War II, Otto united in the United States with a single family dwelling to form suburbs. Suburban influence led to a baby boomer generation far removed from the hardships of their parents. Community standards of the past, driven by scarcity and the need to share public resources, gave way to new credos, credos of self-exploration. As the economy of the 50s and 60s boomed, car sales grew steadily from 6 million units sold per year in the US to 10 million. Married women entered the economy, and two-car households with driveways and garages became commonplace. In the 70s, however, the comparative economic stagnation then experienced was accompanied by societal self-reflection on the changes the auto brought. Critics of the automotive society found little positive choice in the decision to move to the suburbs. The physical movement was looked upon as flight. The auto industry was also under attack from bureaucracy, bureaucratic. Sounds like I'm saying different words. Eh. Be- Bureaucratic fronts and new emission and CAFE capitalized reflect regulations began to hamper big three automobile manufacturers' profit margins. Okay. Okay. In the automobile industry, the term Big Three refers to country's three largest automobile manufacturers. France Big Three are Renault, Peugeot, and Quattro. Yeah, I don't know how to say it. Citroën, although both Peugeot and Citroën are part of Stellantis, German's Big Three are okay. So it's referring to just big three companies in three countries. Keith Schindler in Autokind versus Mankind, 1971, called for a war against the auto, derided it for being a destroyer of cities, and likened its proliferation. Yeah, it's not liferation, it's liberation. Its proliferation to a disease. Renowned social critic Vance Packard in A Nation of Strangers, 1972, blamed the geographic mobility enabled by the auto for loneliness and social isolation. Auto sales Where is auto sales? Darn it. Okay. So, auto sales. Yeah, social critique. Yep. Auto sales peaked in 1973 at 14.6 million units sold and were not to reach comparable levels for another decade. The 1973 Arab-Israeli war was followed by the OPEC oil embargo, leading to an explosion of prices, long gas lines, and talk of rationing. Oh yeah, this thing. Let me briefly talk about it. The 1973 oil crisis began in October 1973 when the members of the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries proclaimed an oil embargo. Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, that is what OPEC stands for. The embargo was targeted at nations perceived as supporting Israel during the Yom Kippur War. Yeah. They pretty much affected the economy and the people. That was a thing that happened. I'm interested in actually searching more videos about that. I want to actually see how people opinions and how they lived. While it may appear clear in retrospect that the automotive slash suburban culture would continue to flourish as it did in the 1950s and 1960s, no such certainty existed at the time when British architect Martin Pauli authored its seminal work, The Private Future, 1973. Pauli called the automobile the, quote, the shibboleth of privatization. Shibboleth. The symbol and the actuality of withdrawal from the community, end quote. And perceived that in spite of its monetary misfortunes, its dominance in North American society will continue. The car was a private world that allowed for fantasy and escape, and Pauli forecasted that it would grow in size and in technological capacities. He saw no pathological in consumer behavior grounded in freedom of expression. Improved transport escalated the outward growth of cities and development of suburbs beyond an earlier era's streetcar suburbs. Into the advent of the car, factory workers lived either close to the factory or in high dense communities farther away. Connected to the factory by streetcar or rail, the car and the federal subsides for road and suburban development that supported car culture allowed people to live in low-density residential areas even farther from the city center, and integrated city neighborhoods were industrial suburbs being few due to in part to single-use zoning. They created a few local jobs, and residents commuted longer distances to work each day as the suburbs continued to expand. Single-use zoning. Oh boy, zoning. I really don't like zoning, and oh boy, I don't want to rant right now. Well, anyway, yeah, we pretty much rate all this. This is all related to the cultural changes from model split, distance, changes to urban society, advent of suburban society, all that jazz. What is it? Yeah, model is supposed to be EL, but well, or is it Bell? I don't know. Let me see. Yeah, it's still supposed to be model. Oh well. The suburbia. That's how they target things. Now let's go to cars in popular culture. Which what is it? That could still be a thing that can still exist even if people don't drive on the roads. Because what is it? A lot of people really like cultural things, and cars is a really big cultural thing. That hell, I mean, there's still a big community for muscle cars, even though it's hard for people, average schmo, to get muscle cars, along with antique cars too. Which, yeah. If a rich person could start a collection, they could certainly keep car culture alive. But I don't know about the average Smo Joe. I believe it. It's positive. Cars in popular culture in the United States. James Dean inside a Porsche Speedster. So James Dean is just a guy with a big helmet. The car had a significant. The car had a significant effect on the culture of the United States. As other vehicles have been, cars were incorporated into artworks including music, books, and movies. Between 1905 and 1908, more than 120 songs were written in which the automobile was the subject, although authors such as Booth Tarkington decried the automobile age in books including The Magnificent Ambersons, 1918, novels celebrating the political effects of motorization, including Free Air, 1919, by Sinclair Lewis, which followed in the tracks of earlier bicycle touring novels. Some earlier 20th century experts doubted the safety and sustainability of allowing female automobilists. Dorothy Levitt was among those who laid such concerns to rest, so much so that a century later there was only one country where women were forbidden to drive, where 19th century mass media has made heroes of Casey Jones, Alan Pinkerton, and other stalwart protectors of public transport. New road movies offered heroes who found freedom and equality rather than duty or hierarchy on the open road. George Monbolt writes that the widespread car culture has shifted voters' preference to the right wing of the political spectrum, and thinks that car culture has contributed to an increase in individualism and fewer social interactions between members of different socioeconomic classes. The American Motor League had promoted the making of more and better cars since the earlier days of the car, and the American Automobile Association joined the Good Roads movement, begun during the earlier bicycle craze. Oh yeah, the golden age of bicycles. When manufacturers and petroleum fuel suppliers were well established, they also joined construction contractors in lobbying government to build public roads. As tourism became motorized, individuals, families, and small groups were allowed to vacation in distant locations such as national parks. Roads include the Blue Ridge Parkway were built specifically to help the urban masses experience natural scenery previously seen by a few. Cheap restaurants and motels appeared on favored roads and provide wages for local and were reluctant to join the trend to rural depopulation. So that's interesting. Okay, so let me actually go with the tourism and national parks. But first, I'm go with what is it? Right in the middle with the cars of it saying that. Okay. Yeah, writes that the right spirit car culture has shifted voters' preference to the right wing of the political spectrum. It's weird how he has it under here, but I mean, this is cars and pop culture. I never thought that this would be a pop culture take where a person talks about it being a very political, especially with people not hanging out with different people with different social, economic, which pretty much means just different classes of people. You know, lower, middle, upper class, taking public transport instead. They could just be in their individual cars in their own private space and stuff like that. I thought it would be under politics, but I figured no, people really don't look at that way. That's interesting. Now onto the tourism part. It's interesting because I can see that in the United States. On the West Coast, you really do need a car to go around anywhere because people are pretty much car dependent. Texas as an example. National parks, yeah, a bunch of parks are pretty separated. But I mean, I'm at that. I'm located in the East Coast, so a lot. I can access cross country parks by uh, walking to one. Uh, there's actually many buses that commute there. You could also take the metro, stuff like that, depending on where you're located. And even so, you can technically still walk into a trail, either not an official trail, but like a man-made trail. Because the thing is, this was how people in colonial America used to walk around if they had to venture out. Um, it is possible. And when it comes to a cross country trail, you stop by towns where people do live constantly, and different ways to commute. So, yeah, yeah. Because yeah, there is a good amount of places that you absolutely need to go to car and go to national parks and stuff like that. But I always feel it's people who usually always carry a lot of crap, and that crap would usually just be a lot of a lot of stuff that you want to do for activities, which I just call it crap because I mean, if you actually carry your own shit and stuff like that, that's pretty much that. But people usually don't. It's usually just basic glamour stuff that it's not great backpacking. I mean, so so the way I look at it is, camp. If I want to go hiking, camping, or do a specific activity, I have to pack everything for that one activity because I'm on foot. Rather than people who usually will have cars, they usually were able to go kayak and bring all their stuff, which is actually pretty. I'm actually fine with it. I do that if I actually really want to go kayak and stuff, but I am very mindful of what I can bring and stuff like that. I have that mentality of thinking about that. But if a person wants to go glamour camping, that does exist, which I believe they should have it here. Should talk definitely more about the tourism and how the effects of cars affect different tourism in nature. But because I can talk a lot about that. So Blue Ridge Parkway. Okay. The Blue Ridge Parkway is a national parkway and all-American road in the United States, noted for the scenic beauty. The parkway, which is America's longest linear park, runs for 469 miles through 29 Virginia and North Carolina counties. Ah, yeah. Actually, is a perfect thing that sums it all up. You really can walk this on foot, and people usually would do it will end up actually have to do hitchhiking because what is it? It can be a little bit dangerous that some people actually have to take it. They have to worry about that. Not like that when it comes to going camping in Europe. But yeah, it's something to look at. Yeah, Now on to Europe. Road building was sometimes also influenced by Kensington, Ken, Kensington, Kensington. Yeah, I keep on saying Kensington, but it's Kensington style political ideologies. In Europe, massive freeway building programs were initiated by a number of social democratic governments after World War II in an attempt to create jobs and make the car available to the working classes. From the 1970s, promotion of the automobile increasingly became a trait of some conservatives. Margaret Thatcher mentioned a great car economy in the paper The Roads of Prosperity. No, for prosperity, citation needed. The 1973 oil crisis, and with its fuel rationing measures, brought to light for the first time in a generation what cities without cars might look like, reinvigorating or creating environmental consciousness in the process. Green parties emerged in several European countries in partial response to car culture, but also as a political arm of the anti-nuclear movement. Now on to cinema. The rise of car culture during the 20th century played an important cultural role in cinema, mainly through blockbusters. Importantly, characters such as James Bond or the ones performed by James Dean were always provided on scene with powerful automobiles, which through time had become cultural icons. Oh boy. Oh yeah. Let me finish up with radio. Radio. With the advent of car radios, radio programming during rush hour became known as drive time. Music also references impacts such as Big Yellow Taxi. Yeah, what's that? Big Yellow Taxi is a song written, composed, and originally recorded by Canadian songwriter John Mitchell in 1970 and originally released on the album Ladies of Canyon. It was also hit in their native Canada as well as Australia and the UK. It only reached numbers 67 in the United States in 1970. Okay, anyway, yeah. This also is related to the collecting fascination of car culture and stuff like that, the collecting of things, which, that's a bit of a modern concept. Because people usually are not that very materialistic until the industrial age. And when it came to media, since we learned that a bunch of people from Hollywood really like car culture, they included like that. But it's also interesting because for the James Bond films, it also talks about the idea of customization and stuff like that, which is just fascinating because you have the old spy car, the old James Bond film that had so many unique tricks and stuff like that, which shows its fascination and why people like cars, which is the built of it, the technology of how there's so many gadgets and things like that. With radio. Q like to tackle with the radio and see if he can make any secret functions and stuff like that. Which, yeah, as a person who like radio, it's like equivalent to what is it? Mass entertainment that you had in a small portable thing. Granted, it's in the car, but people can also see it as the TV, as you consume so much media. And then you later go on with a desktop computer, which later became a mobile smartphone where you could consume all this media. It's fascinating, but just because I had an interest with radios. And, it also showcased it. In the James Bond film, it shows a bit of a nerdy side because the person who was writing for Q and some of the gadgets really had a good old time with it. Now, let's see if I could read all this. Nope, I cannot. Let's see what time I have. Well, I'm not going to rush it because I figure next time I'll... Okay, let me see all this. I'll read further on this and still give my summary because I haven't. Because even looking back at summarizing everything well, car dependency is also part of this, so I'll talk about it when I've summarized everything. But I realize that there's still so much to know about this that would come a bit empty handy if I just summarize it like a few days ago when I just read it. But anywho, it's pretty much it for today, so see ya next time. So long.